I think we're live now, Matt.
I think
Good
so.
morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
I'm very good. How are you doing,
Good.
Sharon? Good?
I'm doing great. Good
Y'all,
morning, anybody who's watching us. I'm still can't see quite yet who's watching, but if you're there, good morning. I thought that today I would talk to you guys a little bit about home inspections because I work a lot with my buyers and sellers on that question. If you have used a loan when you're purchasing a home, home inspections are not a requirement like appraisals are. However, they're highly, highly recommended. We always talk about them, and most people kind of have that expectation that they're going to get a home inspection. But then the question comes, do I need it? What do I need it? What is it going to cover? How detailed is it? All that stuff, and when should I do it? So I thought, let's talk about it with the experts. So I've got Matt here with me today. Matt Kern is sales and marketing for Super Inspector, one of the local home inspection, residential and commercial home inspection companies in the DFW area, as well as Austin and San Antonio, if I have it correctly. And I love you guys because you're always on time and you're thoroughly available everywhere. I can get you guys to come everywhere over DFW, as well as, you're very thorough. So I thought, who else to bring but you guys, so you can tell me a little bit more about home inspections. So good morning. To me, it's morning. I'm not a morning person, so as long as it's not noon, I'm still in the morning. Good morning.
It's still morning. Yeah. And we talk inspection company servicing areas is
Yes.
that a lot of times we see that there's a lot of service type businesses that only go to certain counties or they only go to certain cities and they don't cover the entire area. And we knew from the very beginning when Blake and Angel Williams, who are the owners of Super Inspector, wanted to become a larger inspection company, a multi-inspector company like we are now, is that we had to be able to service the entire metroplex, not just going to one or two little areas where the business is servicing the whole area. Because nowadays, as you know, as an agent, you don't just specialize in one little area, because that one little area might be hot for a while, but it might not be hot later on, And so you guys have to go all over the place in some cases. And so we have to accommodate that in being a service. So yes, we do cover the entire DFW area. So really our service area is all the four main counties: Denton, Collin, Dallas, Tarrant. In every county that touches those counties, that's primarily where we go to in DFW area. And kind of our extents is, we always say we can go to Waxahachie, to Weatherford, to Gainesville, to Sherman, and everything in between. And I like the word that you use, thorough, because we see that a ton of times, and we're so blessed that we really have great buyers and buyers agents that we get to work with. And they leave referral testimonies on like our Google reviews. And that same word always comes up all the time, is thorough, how thorough we were. And we just believe that, look, your buyers are spending the most money they're ever going to spend in their lifetime, probably. And it could be the first time they've ever spent that much. And what we like to say is we want to be the first line of defense when it comes to protecting their investment. And so if we can give the best thorough inspection and best bang for the buck, that's what you deserve. That's what your buyers deserve. And we feel very fortunate and blessed that the way I look at my business is that I get to see families and help families move into safe, secure homes.
That's so true, because as you know, it's up to the buyer to select a home inspection company. Now, in real world, on the ground, some of them don't know. They don't know who to pick, and they're like, well, who do you recommend? Who have you worked with? And I'm not going to recommend a company I haven't worked with just purely on Google reviews or whatever, I will talk to people about companies that I've worked with. So your name always comes up. And the times that I've been able to compare it with maybe somebody that came through a different, a different company that came because the buyer had previous relationship or whatever, I have been able to, in my mind, kind of compare the services and the level of coverage, all the items that it covers, to the point that I am able now to tell a buyer, okay, especially if it's a company I don't know, I'll say before, it's your choice in the end, obviously, but please go back and ask them, do they cover X, Y, and Z? Because they're not all the same, especially when I know it's not with the number of pages, but seriously, when we're talking about a 60-page report versus a 12-page report, pictures in, wording, there's got to be something missing. So I make sure that I tell them, hey, my buyer, make sure before they come out, ask them, do they cover X, Y, and Z? Because if you still want to go with them and they don't cover something, then we're going to have to bring somebody else in. So a good thing maybe to cover right now is, what all does a home inspection cover? Because I get asked that question all the time. And to what degree does an inspector cover it? And maybe you guys can shed some light on that.
Right. Well, when you guys as buyer's agents use a TREC, which is Texas Real Estate Commission, a residential 1 to 4 contract, right? In that contract, it does state in there that you can use or request a TREC inspector. So anytime that the TREC contract is used, then a TREC inspector is who you're supposed to use when you purchase a home and need an inspection. So anytime it's residential or it's the TREC contract, then a licensed TREC inspector. So that's who regulates us. And all of that information, in just about any inspection company, they will give all that information of what that inspector is required to do and what they're not required to do. There's a link in there that you can go to TREC's website and you can actually read and see what the requirements are. So there's a lot of miscommunication sometimes with homeowners and buyers, and even sometimes agents, not really knowing what the TREC inspector is required to do and what the minimum requirements are. We feel like us being super, we better do, if we're going to call ourselves super, we better do super things. And and Blake and Angela feel that way too. And so we have a very stringent training regimen for our employees in the way that we want our inspections to go. When we go above and beyond what the minimum requirements are, but we do respect what TREC requires us to do and not do also on there, because there are some stipulations that we have to follow and guidelines that we have to follow on there too. So you want an inspector. So really, inspectors for residential homes is a very generalist type inspection. It's non-invasive. We do open up a couple of things, but we don't go into a lot of major things too. So when an inspector recommends further evaluation done by a professional, that means that they have found some kind of issue that they think that a professional would probably be able to dive deeper into and find out. And a lot of times that professional might find other deficiencies within that appliance or whatever that service is that they provide that our inspector didn't find because they didn't dive deep into it, because they weren't required to. All they're saying is, hey, we've done our general inspection and we're going to give you the best information we can to what we found in the condition of this home or these mechanical appliances or whatever that is that they found, and then let the pro be able to diagnose what the problem is and what really needs to be fixed. So in an inspection, what we do is we look at everything from top to bottom, inside and out in a home. All of our inspectors will get on the roof if the roof is accessible and safe to get on, or we'll use a camera pole, or we'll use a drone Just depends on what we need to do to take pictures on there too. We're going to look at the foundation, the structural building of the home. We're going to be up in the attic, not just looking at the mechanical parts in the attic, but also the structural part of the attic, the insulation. And then we're going to look at electrical, plumbing, HVAC system, and then also look for any safety items that need to be addressed, and or if we can find any water penetration. So all of our inspectors have cameras that are called FLIR cameras, FLIR, and they can find cold and hot spots throughout the house. And we also use that on the electrical system and the HVAC system. So we can tell whether or not something might be overheating in the electrical panel, or a switch or a plug or an appliance. And we can look at it through the eyes of that camera at the HVAC system and tell what temperature is the air coming out of the register vents, what's going in, what is the ambient temperature in the home, and does it look like the system is working properly at the time that we do the inspection on there too. And so we want to be thorough. We don't want to be a checkbox type inspection company. And yes, sometimes our reports are very long, right? But really what causes more pages on an inspection report than anything are pictures. So obviously a house with deficiencies is going to have more pictures and more pages and more, information to what those deficiencies are. If the house doesn't have a lot of deficiencies, guess what? There's not going to be a whole lot of pages, and there's not going to be a whole lot of pictures, because they're not just taking pictures of just whatever that unit is or what that wall is or that ceiling, unless they see some kind of deficiency there. And so the thermal camera will also look for water penetration. So we always want to look around the doors and windows, because that's normally where the most areas are that is water penetration, and then around the shower tubs and shower pans and that type of stuff, and around the sinks and faucets and that type of stuff too. And we want to see water, the water heater and that type of thing. We're going to really look at, and we're going to take pictures of those appliances and note when those were installed, or when the date was, or when they were manufactured. And because we're going to run into a house that might be 10 or 20 years old. Well, there might be appliances in there that are 10 or 20 years old. Now, it's not for us to say it's a pass or go inspection. Is it working properly at the time that it was inspected? How old is the unit, right? And is it at the end of its lifetime? And it's the same thing with a roof. A lot of times they say these roof shingle manufacturers, have a 15, 20-year-old. Well, we know in Texas that sometimes it might not last 15 or 20 or, years on that too. And a lot of times you can start seeing that when you drive up to a house and you look and you get out of your car and you start walking up to the house, and you can see the roof starting to shimmer, right? Yeah. Little shine spots. Well, that's not supposed to shimmer and shine, right? The reason why it's doing that is because the granules of the asphalt shingles are starting to, loosen up and come off. And usually if the house has gutters, that's where they show up at. So all of a sudden now you have piles of granules in your gutters. And that just means that somebody hadn't cleaned your gutters out lately too. And then there's other times where we pull up to a house and there's no gutters on the house. And I know from being in the trades business and working in foundation is that if I see a house without gutters, I know what's been going on around the house at the time. This water's not shedding away from the house properly, and there's some type of erosion been going on. Now, it could be very minor, or it could be very major. We don't know until we do a full inspection on it. But generally, we're just looking at as far as what the condition of the home is, and is it safe to live in or not, right? And what are the deficiencies? Are they major or minor? And what should somebody look into before they do that? And then that's going to be up to you guys as a buyer's agent, helping your buyer decide on, do you want to try to get some things, ask for some things to get repaired? Or do you want to try to negotiate and get some money back? Or are you going to give a thumbs up and say, you know what, the house is in pretty good condition, we're ready to move in, and let's go from here and get our appraisal done.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, you were saying just from being in the business, that has been my impression. It's kind of like going to a home improvement store
That's right.
and you have a question because you're going to do a DIY, for example, and the person knows as much as reading the label. You're like, great, I could have done that myself, versus somebody who can give you advice.
Yeah.
My impression that I like is, as a layman, so to speak, going into a home, yes, there are a lot of things that an inspector can't get beyond. So I always tell my buyers, they can't cut through the walls. They're not our walls to cut through. And I tell my sellers, hey, make sure things are accessible, because it's very frustrating to a buyer when they hear from the inspector that, well, I couldn't access this, I couldn't access that. Make sure that's the case, and make sure that if you have any good information, aside from the seller's disclosure, which can be very clarifying, but sometimes we find things don't work, and it's because they've been wired in this, over the last 20, 30, 40 years that this house has been around, and they've added to it and all that. Oh, well, you have to push the button that's, in this other room to get it to work. It works just fine. And you're like, it would have been great if I knew that, because then my inspector could have checked it at that time. Now I just know it works, but I don't know, does it work to the degree that I need it? Is it truly functioning or not? And so even for a seller, it's very useful to understand what a home inspection is going to entail, so they can actually help themselves along, help the sale along, by making things available to the inspector. But at the same time, when I meet, when we do the number of hours that the inspector spends looking through everything, and then the afterwards, the review of everything with the buyer, I find it very helpful that the inspector can qualify to some degree whether this is looks like potentially a serious thing that you need to look at. This is a maintenance item, it's wear and tear. We go through a lot of code changes, and I love to be able to hear somebody say, this is not up to code today, but the house at the time that it was built, it was up to code then, so that people understand what they can ask for, what they need to worry about, and what not. So it helps kind of take that very big, thorough report and kind of cull it down and summarize it down to the items that we really need to focus on. For me, I know that different agents choose to do it differently. I like to be there to hear from the inspector, not just receive the report, but actually hear him, be able to ask him questions. And while I understand he's not the expert in everything, he's seen enough, he's knowledgeable enough to give me his own qualitative impression of the situation. Whereas, you really should bring in somebody, or it could be X, Y, or Z. Here are the scenarios, and let us make that decision, because it is a lot of stuff. And at the same time, having a thorough report, I always tell my buyers, there's going to be things that we might negotiate depending on the situation. But in the end, you have a checklist. You can go into your house. Every house needs, and we'll talk about that in a minute, even new houses, the minute you walk in, there is something. And it's a great checklist and the pictures and all that is very thorough, to be able to go around on the weekends and go, okay, these are the things that the seller did not address, or even maybe they're code things that a seller, they're grandfathered in. You don't have to address them really, but you want to for your own safety, this and that. Now you have a checklist. This is not it doesn't serve the purpose of negotiating only. It serves the purpose of, you can go in the next few weekends after you move in and fix these items, address them however you want to. So I find it very useful. And in fact, I've seen people that went and, they might go and get an inspection done outside of a buy-sell situation because they want to bring their home. Maybe it's been 15, 20 years and they haven't really done a whole lot. Let's just see what needs to be done. What could we do? What are important? And go and get an inspection done for simply that purpose, to be able to know what to do next. So that's to me, now you mentioned something earlier. I'm going to kind of jump back to it about the Trek licensed inspectors. Are you saying there are non-licensed inspectors, or what type of qualification is required in the state of Texas that allows somebody to operate? Like, we know roofers don't have to get licensed in Texas. Not a great thing, but there are some selective licensing entities, and some people adhere to that. And, you know, we get to learn who's really good and who's two guys in a truck. So what is it in terms of inspectors?
Yeah, do you know, like, there's only 2 licensed service companies really in Texas, and that's engineers and inspectors, right? On there too. So, yeah, if you were just doing, if you were doing an inspection, if you needed an inspection and you weren't doing a 1-to-4, using a Trek 1-to-4 contract, you don't need a licensed Trek inspector, right? If you're doing certain types of new construction, before the, actually when we do phase inspections, you know, for new builds, phase 1 and phase 2, those don't require a Trek license inspector. There can be any kind of inspector could do that, right? Could go out there and look at it. But when it comes to phase 3, that's before the final walkthrough, that obviously has a, you know, a mortgage most of the time with that, and that would be a Trek residential contract, then that's going to be required. Commercial doesn't require a Trek license inspector in most cases either. So, so really what happens with inspectors is they go through the same type of training to get to the point to take their test for Trek, just like you guys do. So maybe they go to a Champions, or they go to an online school like AHIT or somebody else. And then inspectors take around 400 and something hours to get to the point to take their license. So once they've gone through that, they can go and take their test. They can get licensed through Trek, but that's all that gives them, right? It's the same way with you guys. You get your license. Okay, now I'm licensed.
Like, now what do I do?
Yeah, so really we see that all the time is, what do I do now? But these guys, you know, and gals go out there and they start doing inspections, and maybe they've bought and sold some houses before. Maybe they've built some houses. They've done some type of trades before, and that experience leads them to, you know, hey, I could do inspections, right? But then they don't have any other type of training in a lot of ways, where we've seen that in the past. And matter of fact, Super Inspector is creating, or has created, its own inspection school now, and we're not up and running fully with all of that yet, but we're just getting into that. And I've got some classes certified through Trek to get started, you know, to do some continuing education for inspectors. But when we see them, that's why we put a process together, and our approach is, let's train them the way they should go, right? And let's do the best job that we can for the people so they can get the, you know, the better bang for the buck. So we go above and beyond, and then the inspectors need to get licensed if they want to do termite inspections, right? And wood destroying insect reports, you know. And if they want to inspect pools, they can get certified for that, or septic systems, or whatever it is. There's tons of certifications out there, but it's always an ongoing training. So what we really did is we put lead inspectors together, and they have teams. And so they oversee the other inspectors. And these guys are always continuously training. They're always continuously talking about it. But really what you want to look for is, you want to look for a good, experienced, thorough inspector, but you want to talk to an inspector that maybe does 350, 450 inspections a year. Because by the time you've done 400 inspections in a year, you don't think you don't have some on-the-job training and experience where you've done it all. You know, there's a lot of inspection companies out there, or individual inspectors that don't do termite inspections. So we get called all the time to come and do a termite inspection, which is really kind of funny to us and sad in the same way, is because anybody who orders an inspection, a home inspection from Super Inspector, they get a free termite inspection, right? Yes. It's already a part of it. It's already taken care of. Our inspectors even when they're new, they're going to go start taking their training and their certification for their termite inspection, right? Because the other part is we know that's something that always coincides with an inspection and a home ownership is they're going to need a termite, especially if it's a VA loan.
Yeah.
There's certain requirements for VA that needs to be taken care of, and we can do that. Plus, we have our own pest control company too, which is very helpful. And our owner Blake used to own a pest control company previous when he was on his own, and he worked with his family before, so he knows all the ins and outs of bug control, right, and what to do and how to run that. And so we knew that we needed to align that service with our business also, because there's termites are underground all the time. They're just waiting for that opportunity to come up. And what a termite inspection does, it verifies whether or not there has been previous treatment there before. It verifies whether there could have been infestation if it's visible, right? And it also verifies what environments around the home, inside and out, need to be taken care of to keep those little termites away from our wood, right?
Yeah.
Because once they start to come in, they're going to come in, and a lot of times they hide. And yes, sometimes have we ever missed any? Yeah, but they were hiding in the walls and nobody knew it until they started moving things, right? Inspectors come in and move things. Like they're not going to move your furniture. They're not going to move all the boxes hiding the panel, cover in the garage when you're trying to move. All those kind of things like that. The house needs to be prepared for an inspection. And so, matter of fact, I'd like to offer today, and I'll send this to you, Sharian, is for those who are watching today, we have a whole list of details on preparing your home for inspection. Those items that need to be looked at and be prepared for before the inspector comes in, right? And then really I'll also have another brochure on the top reasons why you want a home inspection. And it really just gives great details to why you really need a home inspection. And a lot of people that don't feel like they never need an inspection on a home is because they don't know the benefits of having that. And we really feel in our industry, we feel like pre-inspections or pre-listing inspections are really a better way to go. But of course, that's always putting the cost of that onto the seller, but we think that having that pre-inspection done before you even have it listed is going to give you the best information of what the condition of the home is and any major things that you might need to tackle now before the buyer and the buyer's agent come along and bring it up anyway, right?
Right. And that's kind of the discussion I have with my sellers as well, is depending on the home. Obviously, again, after working long enough, you start looking at a home and you can kind of see that maybe there are some things that need to be addressed, and maybe you're not getting to the seller's mind, getting into their mind enough, and that might be a suggestion. In some cases, we've taken that on just to say, hey, now there are other things to consider, and we talk about all that, disclosure issues, all that stuff. But in a home where you feel, ooh, the stuff is going to come up. So sticking our head in the sand isn't going to help. Being informed and knowledgeable is very good, because you're right in the middle of things. Buyers often don't know what that means. They haven't lived in the house. They don't have the history. You might scare them off with something that you can address today, and now it's done and taken care of. It's bright new, and whether it's a replacement or a repair, whatever it may be. We talk about that to sellers anyway. We're like, if this is broken, what do you know that's broken? What do you know that's in need of repair? We do that on a seller's disclosure anyway, to the best of our knowledge. And depending on the situation, some of them want to take care of things. So, we always say, just every question a buyer may have, we want to have the answers before they even ask it.
That's right.
So working both sides, you kind of get into the head of the other, and how do we bring those together? And there's definitely situations that quite warrant a pre-sale home inspection, because you're going to know, yes, you're going to have to disclose everything that's on that report. You're going to have to make that report available. but it's certainly better than not knowing and then having a sale fall through. And then the next person's going, well, why did the sale fall through? What happened? And all that stuff. Again, the questions and the concerns about what is there that I don't know, because I'm coming into a home, I'm dealing with a seller that is essentially a stranger to me. So there's definitely a benefit to that. We discuss that a lot of times on a situation by situation basis and evaluate the pros and cons. It's not necessarily a con, but it's a know that, for example, in a selling situation, anytime you have an inspection done in the last 4 years, you're going to have to disclose it. So anything that's on there, whether you're going to repair it or not, but sometimes it's certainly very helpful to say, yeah, we just did an inspection a month ago, and here are all the items. That's usually what I tell my seller. Don't just give them the report, like tell them what you fixed, right? So here's everything in the report, and here are the items we've addressed. Then usually they're the more important items, right?
Right, and clear the repairs too. So especially if there had to be a professional that had to do the service, you want to make sure that, because even in TREC requirements, is TREC says in their statements in their in the contract that you want to use a licensed, professional to do the repairs, and you want to be able to show those receipts of what was actually done from the professional and who did it.
Yes. I know for me, whenever I come across, as a buyer's agent, I come across a home that has been inspected and they provide the full inspection, I will look who did the inspection, because we might still choose to do an inspection of our own.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice to compare and just to see, okay, a month ago they did this inspection, here are the things they've addressed, and now I brought in my inspector and here are the things that maybe bubbled up that were not, or vice versa. It's a really good checkpoint. If you were planning to do it anyway, might as well just do it.
And let me bring something up about that too, because what we hear about this a lot of times is, well, if I do a pre-inspection and then the buyer comes along and does a buyer's inspection, what if there is a difference in the inspection? Well, guess what? There's probably going to be a difference in the inspection, because at the time that the inspector was there, they're relating to what the conditions were at the time that they were there and how things were working. At the time when the buyer's inspector comes, they could be doing something else. You never know. And especially vacant homes, when vacant homes are left unattended, right, and nothing's been used in there, you're always going to find problems where when they go in to start checking things and inspecting things, things can happen then. Or they check it all and it all seems to be working okay, and then the buyer moves in and then they really start putting a load on something or using something, and then it breaks. Right? They're like, well, why didn't the inspector say something about it? Well, guess what? They probably did. They probably checked it, but it wasn't doing what it's doing now, or quit what it was supposed to be doing at the time that it moved in. Things happen like that. And there can be a difference in that, and that's okay. That just means that you've had two sets of eyes on it, and maybe one inspector didn't catch something at the time, or maybe it really wasn't happening or doing something it wasn't supposed to at the time. And now the other inspector, I would say, hey, I'm glad that I got another person to look at it, right? But and then this kind of goes into, and I don't know really how far you want to go into this, but what comes up in Texas all the time is foundation, right? And foundation repairs. And all of our inspectors, we have annual training and biannual training from a local engineer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that trains all of our inspectors on how to do a foundation inspection. And our lead inspectors train our other inspectors how to do it. So we inspect foundations just like a foundation engineer does. We actually use a level, a zip level, that actually measures the elevation height of the foundation, and we do it the same way the engineers do it. So we want to make sure that we're giving the best information that we can, and we actually draw a diagram of the footprint of the slab of the home on the report itself, what those numbers where they measured it from. And so at least somebody has some kind of numbers to start from. Even when they're brand new, we do that same type of advanced foundation inspection at the time and be able to give real numbers. So if something happens down the road, but we can always say this, even from our engineers' standpoint, is that really 90% of homes in Texas really probably don't need repair, right? They need the conditions around the home to improve. And a lot of times there is wrong conditions going on around the house, which is causing fluctuations in the slab itself or in the structure itself in the way that it's moving or shifting, right? And then there's a lot of other times where things have just shifted and then they're not shifting anymore because they've settled in place, but it's caused a few cracks and things like that.
Yes. And that's what I mean by the more information you can give up front. Has it been worked on before? Was there a shift, but you've addressed, you didn't have gutters and there was a lot of drainage issues and now you've addressed them. So whatever it was, it stopped. You're kind of a point in time. You don't know what happened before. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's kind of like looking through the keyhole of what it is today.
That's right.
So as much information as we can give you, I'm sure it's useful, but that's certainly, I can tell you that very early on in my career, when I started with you guys and you were inclusive of a lot of these items, you don't know that that's not always the case. So then somebody comes along and says, no, I've got this great inspector. And again, I'm not saying, there aren't a lot of great inspectors out there, but then you come back and it's like, oh, there is no termite report. And no, there is no foundation measuring. What do you mean? So now you have to get somebody else, or like, oh, well, that's going to cost you extra. So we're not comparing apples to apples when they're saying, well, this inspector is going to charge X, this inspector is going to charge Y, but then there are all these add-ons. Whereas I know you're going to get a very, not to overuse that word, but thorough and inclusive, just overall picture of everything to make sure that, because isn't it, if I remember correctly, an inspector is supposed to give you an opinion of the foundation. But again, an opinion is one thing. I've literally had somebody give us a verbal opinion. What did they base it on? Just the visual. Now, he may have been 100% right, but it sure feels better to have had somebody just actually measure and actually give you a diagram of where they saw things, so that then you can take that and decide, do you need a foundation company to come in, a structural engineer to give you another opinion, what have you, and also be able to have a good informed conversation with the seller on any issues versus, well, I think that's what he said. I'm not sure. I don't have anything to give you. I don't have a picture to show you, but that's what he said. So this is very useful. And
we see that the professionals like to see that information too in a professional format, to where they can look at it and say, oh, here's what they found, and do I see a red flag, and do we need to proceed? And because they can look at that type of information and go, okay, yeah, it might look like there's something I need to come out and do an inspection on, and the professional did come do that, like a foundation engineer,
Right.
And I always recommend, and I worked in foundation for several years. So I worked for a major company in Addison for several years. I was one of those guys out there running a crew, jacking up homes and stuff too. But I would always recommend to anybody who thinks they have or has a foundation problem that's probably going to need repairs is please call a foundation engineer first and let them come out and do a full inspection on it, and let them dictate to the foundation company where they want the piers at. Because once those piers are in place and everything is completed and put back together, the engineer is going to come back out and do a final inspection on it. And then now you're going to have an engineer's report, and you're going to have a foundation warranty on it too. Yes, you're going to spend a little bit more money, but I can guarantee you're probably going to save money in the long run because of the amount of piers that are going to be installed at the time on there. Because the engineer's not trying to sell piers, they're just looking at the house in general and finding out where the problems exist and how to repair those. And I wanted to bring up one other thing about termite inspection, Sherian. I want to remind everybody that always look at the inside of the cabinet door under your sink in your kitchen, because there's going to be a sticker on there, and that's going to tell you when the last time either there's been a pest control company out there doing a spray or something, or an inspection has been done, because that's where they get the stickers at.
Yes,
So you can see when the last time it's been addressed out there too.
Well, you just saved me a whole lot of conversation about this whole getting a objective opinion on how many peers you need, if you need anything, because we've certainly seen cases where there were two companies out there with quite a bit of discrepancy, and you don't know. I mean, you want to opt to, oh, it's probably not that big of a deal, but you really want to know. And a structural engineer certainly is worth the money when it comes to that.
It is. I helped my mom out one year in her home that she was in, and we saved her about $10,000. So that's a lot of money. I mean,
I had a situation that, I had a similar situation, quoted $2,000 or $3,000 worth of repairs versus 16.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a cost thing. It was this is all the work we're going to have to do, and the interior floors were going to be torn up. So there's also that added, cost of putting flooring back in and all that, versus working outside. And it's not that the high dollar is always the wrong one. It could be that they're the right ones, but you want to know. You want to know for sure what the house is, because ultimately you're not just trying to save money or trying to preserve your home, which ultimately costs way more than that.
Yeah, and let me ask you a question from your point of view. Would you rather have a house that has piers or a house that doesn't have piers? So it's a slab foundation, even and let's just say it's been repaired and it's had piers put under it. What do you think's better?
I don't think one is better than the other. I look at kind of the additional data. So when a house has had repeated repairs over the years, 3, 4 times repairs are being done over and over and over, it may be that the soil in that area is just bad. It's going to continue to have issues.
Yeah.
It may be that you keep fixing it, but like you mentioned, the surrounding environment isn't being fixed, right? So you keep putting piers in, but you still don't have gutters and you still have bad draining points, right? Or maybe you need a French drain put in and you're not doing that.
Yeah.
You need a better, drainage irrigation situation. So it's going to continue to be an issue. Now, if it's a brand new house or a house that's only a couple years old and hasn't had any foundation issues, who's to say, again, depending on what the surrounding circumstances are, that it won't need it. I had a kind of a mentor agent once tell me, look, a house with piers already has that part covered. Yeah. So now you only have to worry about the other part of the house that hasn't had any piers done. And that's one way to look at it. We do live in Texas. Yeah. Things move. I look at what type of foundation is put on. As you know, some areas in the DFW area have soil treatments done prior to the foundation being poured, because they know when the builders inspect the area and look at everything, what needs to be done before they put the house in, which, without getting into the really great builders that do their due diligence up front and those that don't. So I just tell people, just because it has foundation work doesn't mean you need to shy away from it. We need to look at what work has been done. What are the circumstances around it? Is it something that maybe the foundation work hasn't been done, it's reasonable, maybe it's a plumbing issue, because that's the other thing with foundation, like, have they done a plumbing test? Are we now I look at it at 0.0. So now we're a clean slate, it's been fixed. Is it going to be an issue ongoing, or is there a big giant tree that the root system is just going to continue to grow that needs to be removed, or stopped in some way in order for us not to continue to have that issue? And what are the costs associated with that? Do we need to put gutters in, like you mentioned, on this house to avoid continuing issues? And what's the cost associated with that? So they fixed the foundation, but in order for you not to have issues again, let's look at all these additional things. Do they make sense? We once looked at a house that had foundation work done, great renovations on the inside, but it had major trees really close to the house. And it was to the point where you could have issues removing the tree as well. So, once you get an arborist and they talk to you about it, removing the tree isn't always an issue, isn't always the solution, because you might create gaps there. I looked one time at a house that it was definitely a fixer-upper, but even when we work with investors, there's levels of fixing up that they're willing to do.
Yes.
And this house had like bubbling flooring, and they said that they had a foundation warranty. Long story short, there had been at least 4-year ongoing leak happening under that foundation. And the foundation company said, we've talked to the owners, they've voided their warranty because they've never fixed it. They've called us back and still didn't fix it. And frankly, once we fix it, the drying that's going to happen underneath, we might have to, I missed the word, but they have to backfill the gap that may happen once all that
Void.
Yes, the void that happens. So there's a lot to it than just how does it have piers and how many, that go into the story. And I go, this is Texas, you guys. You can't just get scared because you hear foundation, because then you're probably going to eliminate 90% of the homes. Let's know the story and let's know information. And a lot of times, if we're going to purchase a home that used to be a rental, unfortunately, if the landlord hadn't been up and about, or the renters really haven't been paying attention to the home, sometimes they can be more run down because nobody's addressed it. So we go, okay, this is what was happening here, X, Y, and Z we have to do to avoid this from becoming an issue ongoing. I would say, sure, when you see a clean seller's disclosure, no issues, it's going to give you a little bit of okay, let me now go look at it. However, looking at the home in person is going to help. Walking it, looking at where the soil level, you can tell if a home has been taken care of or not, or whether other circumstances are going to be an issue if you don't address this, in the near future.
That's right.
Long-winded answer, I know.
And I'll be happy. And matter of fact, I have a really good PDF information on maintaining the soil, maintaining your foundation, how to water it properly in Texas. So I'll be happy to share that with you.
I would love that. I would love that.
On that too, because that's really important, right? It's if you control the environment around the home will respond to it positively.
Yes, absolutely. I know that when I deal with buyers, a lot of times they decide how old they want the house to be.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about, well, it can't be older than 5 years, or it can't be. And usually I follow up that statement that I receive with why. You have to tell me, you're buying a pre-owned home. Now, if we're talking, I don't really want to go into the 70s or whatever, because we're talking plumbing issues and materials and things like that. That's a different story. However, when you're talking about certain numbers of years that come up, then I want to know why. And sometimes it has to do with, well, it's going to be older, it's going to need a lot of stuff. And I walk them through a 5-year-old home, and then I walk them through a 15-year-old home, and they can't believe that the 15-year-old home is the older one because of the upkeep that has happened and great maintenance of a home. I'm not a believer that a home is it's not a disposable item. It's not a depreciating item. It's not a car, right? So aside from prices going up and all that, there's a lot. I mean, in other countries, you can walk in and easily buy 100-year-old house, and nobody's thinking that this is, oh my God, it's going to fall apart.
Right.
It's how it was built to begin with, which I want to jump into your phase inspections that you mentioned. But how it was to begin with and how it's been kept up over the years certainly makes a big difference. But you mentioned that about phase inspections. And a lot of people ask me, why do I need a home inspection when I'm buying a new build? I mean, aren't city inspectors and all that, that's already being taken care of. So instead of just hearing it from me, please share how that's useful and how you found it useful to your clients when you guys have done new construction.
Well, that first, you brought up about people who talk about, well, aren't they already inspecting the home? Well, yeah, they're already inspecting the home. So the city, the builder might have an inspector, you know, an in-house inspector looking at, you know, different things. The city's going to have certain requirements and conditions that have to be met, but those inspectors are not looking at the home as looking out for the buyer's best interest, right? And so we don't work for those companies, we work for the buyer. And so phase one is an inspection before the concrete is poured. So the pad side is prepared, the plastic barrier is down, all of the trenches are in, the beam trenches are in, you know, for the load-bearing walls, the plumbing, everything's roughed in, the steel is down, and the forms are up, and it's ready for, you know, concrete pour. So we're going to go out there and look at the building plans and make sure that everything looks to be right by what the plans call for to what's actually on the ground. We're going to look to see that the pad side is clean and it is ready. And I mean clean even compared to that there's not trash been thrown down in the trenches. There's not Coke cans down in there and wrappers and things like that that can create a void within that it is really prepared, you know, for the concrete to come down. And we actually even measure the form boards with our zip level just to see that they're level, right? And then, so that's done. And that's probably one of the hardest ones to get scheduled with the builder, just because of the times that they have scheduled with their concrete teams and crews to come out and do that. And then phase two is before the sheetrock goes up. So the slab is down, the walls are up, the roof is on, and we call it a dried in state, meaning that the roof is on the house. If it rained, the house wouldn't get wet on the inside. The windows are in, temporary doors are up. The electrical, plumbing, and the HVAC system's been roughed in. The sheetrock might even be on the ground at the property, but no insulation and no sheetrock has gone up yet. So we want to go through there and we want to look to see that everything's installed properly, that the structure itself is built properly by what the building codes, you know, require at the time, and then call out anything that we see. We want to make sure that all the windows and the door areas are taped up and that they are insulated properly, and that all the sheathing on the side of the house outside is all taped up and all the seams, because we don't want, once the sheetrock goes up and the brick veneer goes up, you don't know if all those seams are really covered up and what's exposed to the outside environments where water penetration, wind, whatever else can, you know, can get in there, right? Or pesky little insects and animals and things like that.
Yeah.
And so phase two is really important, because once everything gets covered, you don't know what's behind it, right? And then phase three is before the final walkthrough. So the house is complete. Everything has been trimmed out on the inside. All the appliances are in. All the utilities are on. Air conditioner's running. You know, it's ready for move in. And then we're going to do a full-blown inspection, just like an existing home, and just make sure that everything is ready to go, and then call out anything that we don't see. There is another inspection, what we call the 11th month inspection, and that's when the house has been lived in for less than a year. before the 1 year, and most builders give like a 1 year warranty. And so even if the homeowners don't get any of the other ones, 11th month warranty inspection, meaning that we're going to come in, do a full blown inspection from top to bottom, inside and out. And we're going to be able to show them, hey, did we find any minor or major deficiencies and what needs to be addressed to that warranty company? So maybe they can get those. And really what that creates is a nice punch list for the homeowner to be able to give to the builder's warranty company and say, hey, I've had a third-party inspection done, and here's some deficiencies that they found. I want to get these addressed by the warranty company so I don't have to pay for it out of pocket.
Right. No, I think that's a great one, because you know how things are. They tend to break on the 13th month, right? So this is a great one. Yeah, this is a great one. And I love how you explain that, because it sounds to me like phase 3 is kind of like what we have in pre-owned homes, because it's closed up. But that phase 2 and phase 1 are those things that we don't have the privilege of seeing in a pre-owned home. And really, they are oftentimes why you buy a brand new home, why you buy new construction, so you can have it done your way, the right way, in your mind, like the best way possible, versus here it is, it's ready, it's on the shelf, you know, you're buying the shelf, so to speak. So why not take advantage and understanding that you're working for them versus somebody coming in for the builder's side. And we're not saying that everybody's we're not fighting one another, but everybody has their own set of priorities, obviously, and they need to address those for themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. And if we're all aligned, that's great. I do not like to address with a seller of a pre-owned home, with a home builder. We're not here to be combative, but we're here to check off everything so everybody's happy. And just like a home builder has, you know, we talk about that even on representation, like, hey, I'm building new, you know, they're going to do for me what they're doing for everybody else. If somebody is there to represent the builder, what's wrong with you having somebody to represent you? That goes in terms of having a realtor on your side. That goes also in terms of having an inspector on your side who has no skin in the game, but to make sure to open your eyes and tell you things that you don't know. Just because you're, you know, working with a builder, frankly, my question is always, are you a builder? Do you know anybody in the building industry? Like, do you understand really what you're looking at? Or are you taking everything that the builder is telling you like, this is it? Because when I walk them through the different ways to build, and you know, there's plenty of classes, like you said, with inspectors that can get certified. We have the same thing where we can take on classes and understand a lot of that so that we can advise our clients on, you know, what grade of builder this is, what your expectations should be with this type of builder versus that type of builder. You know, people build a home and expect things to be like custom kind. And I'm like, there's different levels of custom building. There's, you know, there's there's just all kinds of different things. So certainly you're not going to walk in knowing all that. At least you need to know what is correctly done and what's not correctly done, and have somebody who doesn't have skin in the game one way or the other to tell you what it is.
I think the word is accountability, right?
Yes.
We're holding the builder accountable to the work that their contractors do.
Right.
And really, for the most part, most of all builders out here, especially in the DFW area in Texas, they're all good builders, right? They all have to follow certain standards and things like that. But is who's putting the eyes on the work that the craftsmen are doing, right? Or the tradespeople are doing. Right. And that's all changed over this last 10 years. Trades businesses they need help, right? Out there. I know on the plumbing side of the business, plumbers, there's always people looking to hire more plumbers. There's a lot of trades out there that are always looking for good people and people to come up and train for the next generation, you know, to take over and do work from on that too. But I think for the most part, pretty much everybody does a pretty good job. But there is nothing wrong with getting another set of fresh eyes on that workmanship and saying, hey, we're going to give you thumbs up. Or you know what? I could show y'all pictures and pictures and pictures because I see it from our new construction inspections. I call them inspection fails.
I love to follow your Facebook page and see some of the things you guys post that you find.
Yeah, and it's, it just, and it might just be that something just got missed. It just fell through the cracks on there too. But how do you, the main thing in any type of service business is if there was a mistake or if there was something missed, how do you address it and hold accountable for that? And how do you fix the problem and move on and not just give excuses? Let's fix the problem and move on and don't let it happen again, kind of thing,
Right.
But I would think too, as a builder side, I would appreciate somebody else telling me, hey, we keep seeing the same thing over and over again, from your contractor. If I had somebody tell me that, then that would be something I would need to go and address to my contractor and saying, hey, we keep finding this deficiency and it's by somebody in your team, right? Or it's by your business or whatever it is. Or are you aware of this and how can we address this to fix this problem?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
The longer it goes, the longer it's never addressed, the longer it goes. It's like, if it's an inch off here and you move 1,000 feet down there, it could be that far off, right? It's the same thing, and not addressing the issue now is what is it going to be like in a year from now or longer? Is it going to be worse? When we should have fixed it in the first place and it would have been minimum cost to fix it or the work itself. Whereas now we have to jump through hoops to get it fixed and pay a lot of money to have it repaired.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Matt, I'm going to put the that ticker that I discovered on this little handy dandy tool because I know, yes, I like to use handy dandy tool because I just like to figure them out. There we go. Here's the reason why I want to put that on there, because I know that other than home inspections, I didn't even get into commercial this time. That'd be another show. But you guys do a lot of other stuff and a lot of services. I know you have a concierge service for when people move in and anything that they need or any kind of repairs and so forth. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of additional things. So I wanted to put that on there so people can see what all the services are that you offer. But can you give us, I know we're a little bit over, but just give us a quick overview of all the other things that you guys do.
Yeah, so we knew when we were building the inspection business that we wanted to bring vertically aligned companies of our own within this, not only to help us out in our business, but also to try to see the best way that we saw where the services were needed in our industry, in the real estate market industry. But also, if we can help the client, the homeowner, maintain their home better, then hopefully they're going to get more money for it whenever they sell, right? And they're going to not have to do as many things to that. So our superteamservices.com is a great website to go to, and that describes all the services that we provide. So not only from residential and commercial inspections, but we have pest control, we have concierge, we have handyman service. So we have our own inspectors who were tradespeople in the past before they were even inspectors that know how to do handyman services. So our handyman are inspectors also, but they just decided to go on that side of it. And we have concierge service. So if people need to get quotes on getting repairs done, or they need to get utilities installed or hooked up, or they just need to get a quote on homeowners insurance or anything like that, they can set that up with them and be able to take, and that's a free service. All of the services now, the repairs or the actual services cost money, but the concierge side of it, it's free to the public. It's free to your clients that they can go on and we can help them get that information that they're looking for or the quote that they're looking for also on there. And then we also provide some other services, and now we started providing this year our own in-house sewer cam inspections. So we can do a sewer cam inspection on the sewer line, from the clean out into the house, and then from the clean out to the street. We can provide that service also.
Yes, I've actually used that on a couple of homes that my buyers are using, and even cost-wise, it was very cost-effective compared to just going to an outside company. So
yeah, and then when COVID-19 started, we pivoted very quickly in March, and we set up a decontamination service. So we purchased some ozone machines, went through some training on that, and so we have a decontamination service. So if people are a little freaked out about moving into a home that somebody else lived in, or somebody showing a home and getting a lot of traffic coming in and out, and they want to decontaminate their home, we can set up a service for that where we'll come in with an ozone machine, do a decontamination of the home itself, and then do a full wipe down of the house itself with decontamination spray, and get the house smelling nice and fresh. So anybody that has a home that's had animals in it or has had a smoker's home, that decontamination system can help eliminate the smell and odors in the home also. So that's another.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, that's another.
That is fantastic, especially right now. We've obviously done a lot of things differently during COVID. In terms of how we view a home, how we prepare a home, showings, everything. I know that I've dealt with everybody I interact with are home warranty companies. When they come in, they ask the home seller, has anybody gone through? We all have had all that rigorous homework that we have to go through. And I know that your guys come in and are prepared with their safety gear. And I've also seen that you've done video conferencing so that the buyer doesn't actually have to come to the home, and your inspector can show them that, which is, again, less touch points. So that's come up in recent time that, hey, just like you have a move out clean, a buyer, whether it's the buyer or the seller, whoever wants to offer that, and we've had various situations, can offer a decontamination service at the end or in the middle, wherever it makes the most sense for that, basically peace of mind of the people involved in the home. That's a great service. Yeah.
Right. And we want to be safe. We want our inspectors, our employees of our company, to be safe, because listen, they have to go home to families also, right? And we sure don't want them taking something home or bringing something home to the other home too. So they're going to make sure that they're wearing their mask and their gloves, and that they're bringing, their hand sanitizer and all those type of things, and just respecting the home the best way they can. And those people who are going to be in there, whether it's the buyer or the sellers or the buyer's agent, coming through on that. And we've done a lot of either FaceTime or Zoom or virtual walkthroughs with buyers who maybe have been out of state or just didn't feel comfortable about coming into a home that other people were living in at the time. So, we all have to pivot and do the best things that we can in our services to help, facilitate the services that need to be done at this time.
Yeah. And we thank you for that. Well, Matt, thank you so much for this time. It's been very useful. This is what I had talked about. I know that every time I deal with one of your inspectors, they have so much more around the topic to give that makes it very, very useful for my buyers to listen to that report at the end versus just getting a written report. And it's obviously the same with you. We've talked about foundations, we've talked about termites, we've talked about building, all these other things that go hand in hand with the core of what we do in this business. But the more somebody is well-rounded, so much more helpful. More helpful. I've certainly gotten a lot of feedback in the past about your inspectors and how thorough they are, and I love it. do I need to put, what's the main, I have the main number for super inspector in case somebody wants to call in for pre-sale or just to get their home inspected.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for your time. And I'm sure we run into each other for a million other things, real estate related. And what are you going to do the rest of your day? Busy?
So yeah, I've always got my calendar planned out and the things that I'm preparing for and doing. And so, I'd already had a meeting before we got on here this morning, and then I've got a few other things to take care of this afternoon. And I've got a house full of girls right now. I still have a 11-year-old at home and her friends, and so I'll make sure and get them fed and taken care of this afternoon, and just get ready for tomorrow also. And
Yes.
I appreciate so much of being on with you today. I really think that we communicated well today. I think we shared a lot of great information to our audience on there, and I will be sending out that information. So just remember, guys, if y'all would like any of those e-brochures and PDFs that we discussed in our services today about inspections, I'll be sharing that with Sherry, and you can just ask her, and she'll be able to email those to you. And I appreciate being on, and thanks for all the great questions today. You did really good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you have a wonderful day.
I will. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.